Saintess summons skeletons. By Morn. Chapter 441, Curiosity, almost, killed the saint. Sofia's first instinct was to see if her dagger could damage any of the walls, the ground, or the ceiling. Since her right arm was stuck, she had to make a third arm out of bones and control it from where she was. Of course that did not work. What's next? Next she focused on her mana senses. There was clearly some kind of magic powering the walls. Rituals. What is sustaining them? It was not a static source but a constant mana flow. Following the thin streams of mana beyond the wall, Sofia's mana senses eventually bumped with the black fog, which completely prevented her from looking any further. If I could cut that. I can use my ring to drain all the mana, but that would only deactivate the rituals for a few seconds at most. If the side walls locking us in do not come down, then we still won't be able to get out. Still, disabling the crushing walls would be a start. The best way is probably to destroy the ritual circles somehow. I could just teleport to the other side if not for the dungeon's restrictions. Trying to find a way to the mechanisms powering the walls, Sofia, Parith, and Bookie looked around for an opening. Bookie noticed a gap between the closing walls and the crushing walls. A tiny gap of just a few millimeters. That's a start. I could use that opening to summon Rod on the other side, but there isn't enough free space to use the heal undead light. I should at least take a look directly to the other side. Free ritual circle schematics. I just need to slide a token through the... Crap. I forgot to take out any vision token when the dungeon started. Since Sofia still had the 10 100 kilograms bone slates just floating behind Bookie, she could just make more tokens. It was just not the ideal environment. She had made plenty of vision sharing tokens, so she knew the ritual circle well enough to be able to draw it with her eyes closed. With Bone Dominus it even carved itself. Since she was making one anyway, she made a batch of 10. She sent 9 flying straight into Bookie's backpack, while the 10th one flew to the corner and slid through the thin gap. When Sofia felt that it was on the other side, she used the shared vision. She had expected there to be no light, but the ritual circles were actually glowing softly, enough to see. Gears? The walls are mechanical traps powered by a spinning enchantment. That's clever. And the gears are made of wall. No wonder we can't push back at all. That looks like a relatively simple mechanism, I think. Destroying is out, but can't we just dismantle it? Sofia cut the vision and turned to Bookie. Can you get a summon on the other side of the wall through the gap? Bookie nodded as if it was obvious that a 3 mm gap was enough to let the mist through, which, now that Sofia thought about it, made a lot of sense. Especially since she knew from building the Kijikik infiltrators that a fist-sized hole was no issue. Just get the engineer in there, he'll know what to do. Bookie gave a thumbs up and ripped the page off himself, controlling his mist to have it flow to the other side before it formed into the engineer skeleton. Sofia reconnected with the token and watched the skeleton rise from the mist. You got the situation from Bookie? Can you do something about the wall? Removing a gear should do the trick, right? The engineer skeleton shrugged and walked up to the mechanism, observing it from a few angles before starting to try to unscrew some kind of big hexagonal thing. He gave up after a few seconds and turned to the floating token, before starting to mimic using tools like a shovel or a pickaxe, then pointing at himself. Sofia realized that he needed materials to make tools, so she cut some more out from the bone slates and had it squeeze through the gap until it made it to the other side. The engineer skeleton used his skills to reshape them into weird tools and promptly got to work moving things around in the mechanism. First, the pressure on Sofia's arm from the front stopped. The wall the engineer was working on no longer tried to crush them, but it still did not move back, and since the wall behind was still pushing, the situation had not changed much. Finally, the skeleton managed to take out the enchanted gear and place it back after flipping it around. The wall started to retract. Again, the wall behind was still pushing, so all this accomplished at first was having the group slide over a few dozen centimeters, but the pushing wall stopped as it was fully extended, and the retracting wall finally gave them some breathing room, freeing Sofia's arm. That's a good start. Now we just need to lower the side walls. Think you can manage that? The exterior of this section of corridor was completely hollowed out to make space for the machinery, so the skeleton could just walk to the other side from below the corridor and do the other wall if wanted, but instead he stayed below and managed to convey to Sofia that yes, he could lower the walls. Yet, he did not do it right away, and instead kept looking around the machinery. Eventually he found what he was looking for and grabbed the token to show Sofia. Another ritual, beneath the corridor. That's right below me. The ritual circle looked relatively simple, so Sofia tried to understand what it was. It looks like it just takes in mana to send an impulse of some sort? What's the power source? This ritual circle was rather subtle, as it only ever activated for a fraction of a second as it sent an impulse into the mechanism. Sofia had not even felt it when she was probing around with her mana senses before. Sofia observed it for a bit, watching it be triggered a few times before she connected everything. It's my mana. It's a mana sensor. This is what triggered the trap. Engineer, you're a genius. What are you being all bashful for? Stop hiding your skull and lower the walls. We can't get you out, so you'll be dismissed right after, but I feel like we'll need you again soon. Thank you for the good work. Finally the side walls were lowered and the group could escape the crushing corridor. So much trouble for a single trap. The group started advancing again, but as a safety measure, Sofia sent out waves of mana along the walls, ceiling, and floor every so often to trigger any potential trap using a similar trigger system. But for now, there were no other traps. In fact, the group advanced through the corridor as the black fog moved with them, and there were no more sunless drones either. They were slow and careful, on the lookout for more traps. The corridor ended in a small square room. There were no other doors, so sadly the group had hit a dead end, but they won a little something for their trouble. In the middle of the otherwise empty room was a big treasure chest. A dead end already? I should have turned left. Sofia did not even enter the room. What do you guys think this is going to be? Explosion? Poison gas? A fireball, maybe? A sunless amalgam squished down and hiding in the box. From Bookie's gestures, he was betting on the explosion. Perith seemed a little less certain, but neither of them doubted the notion that the conspicuous chest was trapped in some way. It's hell difficulty. I'm not expecting any free handouts. But I can't just not open it, right? Sofia weighed the options, trying her best to take into account what she had learned about cutting one's losses and not falling for sunk cost fallacy. The safest thing to do was just to walk back and try the other path. That just doesn't feel right. Sofia identified the chest, getting absolutely no answer from the magic. It was a painfully obvious red flag, but Sofia's curiosity pushed her to keep probing, hiding safely behind Perith's shield. There's quite a bit of mana in there. Like a big lump. It's not really moving. Did Everel really stuff a sunless inside? Could also just be a large magic item. It's a big chest, so it's not impossible to hide a few drones in there. The mana seems a coherent whole though, so it would be only one creature. I'll be damned, I might have been right from the start. This could be an amalgam. A small one, but an amalgam still. If so, this could be disastrous. The corridor is still too narrow, I can't possibly dodge an amalgam's dark lances with so little space to move around. In the end, Sofia felt like her options had changed. She could try to open the chest. If it was a magic item, she won her bet. If not, she was in deep shit. The safer option was to destroy the chest, giving it the bolt treatment for as far as the black fog would allow. But this made the chance of getting a magic item out of it almost zero. And if I have no chance of getting an item, isn't it just as bad as not opening the chest? Oh, hey, wait. I have another way to check. I'll know if it's a monster with 100% certainty as well. Praised be the Lords. Guys, in case this triggers something. Prepare to run. Walking as far from the chest as the black fog would allow, Sofia activated the Ring of Zar. Mana collapsed onto her as the cursed black fog got sucked in, but to Sofia's relief, there were no movements from the chest. It was also still full of mana. So it was a fucking monster after all. Chapter 442, Claptrap. The black fog rapidly reformed behind Sofia, but she was focused on the monster inside the chest. I can't get enough distance. If I throw an explosive so close, with the corridor I'm in being the only place for all the force to go, I'll just kill myself. Piercing it is, then. But what if it's not enough? That could work. Half an hour later, Sofia was about ready to go. The bone slates she had been lugging around the dungeon until now were nowhere to be seen. Such a stupid plan. Perith stood a good few steps behind Sofia with his shield ready. He could not stand in front of her, or he would be in the path of the bolt. The corridor was just that narrow, basically just a bit larger than the wooden chest Sofia was about to blast to another dimension. It would be nice if that could just kill whatever's hiding in there. Mana, 417 100/417 100. I have to keep at least 20 seconds of Runeforged Overlord 3rd tier. Runeforged Overlord. Tier 3, 2, 1% max mana per second, requires the user to have wings. Successful attacks inflict a short-lasting confusion. Reduce all incoming damage by 20%. Omnidirectional free flight. Acceleration resistance. Plus 124.5% speed, skill level /2. Plus 124.5% strength, skill level /2. Plus 124.5% agility, skill level /2. It was such a pain to level up and I haven't been using it except for the flight. A quarter of my mana should do. Let's just go for a 300,000 piercing bolt. It's my first time doing a piercing this strong, I think. With the plan all laid out in her head, and the chest at the edge of the black fog 15 meters away, Sofia started channeling the bolt. Blue lightning slowly formed in her hand. Unlike the explosive bolts, it was smooth and controlled from the start. Sofia's mana fed the lightning more and more until it became bright like a miniature sun. The creature within the chest did not move. Not showing yourself until the end. I don't know if you're dumb or overly confident. As the angel bolt was just about ready, Bookie's one rat jumped off from Paritha's shoulder and ran through the corridor, past Sofia, and jumping straight for the chest. There was still no reaction, so the rat followed its orders, climbing the side of the chest and trying to open it. The chest's lid opened like it was powered by a springboard, it slid ever so slightly on the ground, destabilizing the rat, and it closed just as fast, crushing the small skeleton in 1,000 pieces. What? Long, sickly purple limb grew out of the treasure chest, 2 arms from the sides and 2 legs from the bottom. It stood up. There is no monster in the chest. The monster is the chest. Sofia released the lightning, which sent her reeling back, but she was caught by Parith. The chest ducked, but the bolt still struck. Instead of piercing the chest through the middle, it bore a semi-cylinder-shaped hole through the curved chest lid before crashing into the wall and releasing a burst of airborne electricity. Not only did the chest monster survive, but it roared, its lid thrown back, revealing a gory inside full of teeth and blood. Sofia had no time to even be shocked at the monster's ability to almost dodge the bolt, she simply followed her plan, cutting off Paritha's main skull with her dagger, grabbing it and Bookie, activating the last tier of Runeforged Overlord, and running back with all her might. A monster who could survive a 300,000 mana bolt upgraded with the charged Ring of Zar was not something she could fight in her current condition. The monster charged at her, almost reaching the spot Sofia had just been standing on in a single step of its grossly elongated legs. Accumulating all of her speed bonuses, Sofia was stupendously fast, and yet, the monster was right on her tracks. As she ran, the monster lunged out from the black fog, trying to hit Sofia with a flying kick. Paritha's flying shields of light barely appeared in time to slow the kick just enough that Sofia could outrun it. How fucking fast is that thing? If it could recover and do another kick like that first one again, it might just really lob off her head the next time. Finally, Sofia made it to a section of the corridor with the walls covered in bone. The right leg of the chest monster emerged from the fog again. Another kick. Almost there. As she reached the end of the bone-covered zone, Sofia jumped forward and controlled all of her remaining mana to eject it behind her. An instant before the kick could reach her, a wall rose from the ground like a reverse guillotine, catching the leg. With a sickening crunch, the leg folded back onto the raised wall before sliding down it, amputated by the wall. Sofia landed face first on the ground, and she slid for tens of meters, her armor grinding against the ground as her momentum wore off. Lying flat on the ground, Sofia tried to catch her breath. Running this fast was extremely hard on her stamina, but the monster was trapped, so she knew she was safe. Finally managing to sit, she turned around. She was too far from the closed wall to see it because of the cursed black fog, but she could hear the mad roar of the chest creature. I can't believe this worked. Bookie struggled, and Sofia let him go from under her arm. Oh, sorry. Under her other arm was Paritha's skull. Although he had been downsized by the dungeon, his weight was unchanged, so she could only carry the skull if she wanted to run at full speed while lifting him. Even just the skull was plenty heavy. Currently, he was not regenerating because Sofia had removed all the Bone Dominus blessings, expressly to avoid him growing too heavy for her to carry while she ran. She got to work applying Paritha's blessing again before she even stood up, and his spine started to regrow at a visible pace. You'll be back to business in just a minute. Let me carry you for a bit still. Sofia brought Parith to the closed wall while Bookie followed. The bloodied monster's cut leg was just lying there. The wall had closed so violently because the engineer skeleton had adjusted it to. Under Sofia's supervision, he had modified the trapped corridor in a few ways, firstly making the doors close even faster than they already did, and also making the sensor ritual much harder to trigger. This was why she had needed to send all of her remaining mana out to activate it. As Sofia approached closer to the wall, the corridor shook. The monster was hitting the wall. However, the wall was not budging, showing not even the smallest of cracks. The group had seen when fighting the sunless drones, the walls were truly impervious to all damage, even from the dungeon monster's attacks. "You're trapped in there, buddy. No use trying to break the walls," Sofia hailed. There was no answer, the monster kept hitting the wall. "Not sentient, I guess?" Sofia bent over to grab the dismembered leg. It was shockingly hard and cold like ice. She could feel the broken bones inside. "Sir Scribe, any comments?" "Mimic leg, the leg of a mimic chest, quite the unusual find. The mighty kick of the mimics have been the demise of a great many adventurers. Can be used as a decent makeshift weapon." "Mimic chest? The name does fit. Makeshift weapon, hey?" Sofia glanced at the ugly yellow-nailed toes on the leg's foot. "Thanks, but no thanks," she commented as she placed the leg against the wall. The trapped corridor's crushing walls were currently disabled. It was the last change Sofia had made the engineer skeleton work on. It was meant to give Sofia time to negotiate with the monster in case it was capable of speech, which it was clearly not. Using Bone Dominus to move around the bones she had left inside of the trap's mechanism, she released the crushing wall's safety lock. Sofia, Bookie, and Perith could all hear the walls start closing. The following 15 seconds were filled with the monster's screams, the cracking of wood, and the sound of crushed bones, and even despite knowing how horrendous the monster looked, Sofia couldn't help but feel a bit shaken by the human-sounding screams. Finally, they heard the low sound of the two walls meeting each other, then, silence. "You have defeated Tall Mimic, LV 299, imprint intact." Only 299. It was as fast as the destroyer. And of course, just like all the sunless drones, imprint intact. I guess in this dungeon they always come out intact. That's a nice boon considering all the malices we get. Now to shift around the bones inside a bit more. It was impossible to just reopen the doors, but to have them be locked a bit less tight by shifting some internal components with the bones she had left in the mechanism was possible, so Sofia did that. Using the newly formed gap between the wall and the ceiling, Bookie could summon the engineer back inside of the trap mechanism. A minute later, the door wall opened, and the crushing walls behind also started to spread out, revealing the bloody mush stuck to them, remains of the mimic. "Think you can work these bones, Bookie?" "They're more than a bit broken, but there should be no missing parts," she asked as she threw the cut leg in with the rest. Since she had not used Bone Dominus on them, unlike on the destroyer, they might still be good to go. Bookie seemed uncertain, but willing to try, which was not how he usually operated, but before he could do anything, Sofia noticed something buried in the bloodied remains. A glove. Chapter 443, Strong Feelings. Sofia fished the glove out of the mess of entrails, and her first reflex was to wash it with a bit of summoned blood. It's all right, no one saw that." A bit embarrassed, she fished out a water stone from Bookie's backpack and properly cleaned the glove. It was made of a rather durable, shiny black and elastic leather-like material, with white highlights around the cuffs. There were a few clean enchantments embroidered in gold thread on the inside under the palm. "Right hand. That's getting a bit crowded. I could put it on, but it does look somewhat small." "Mr. Scribe?" Everel's ultra-cool right glove, a cool glove with basic durability enchantments. By feeding extra mana into it, it can produce a magic ray of freezing cold from the palm of the hand. Part of a two-piece set. Ice magic. That caught Bookie's attention, and Sofia immediately noticed that. "You want it?" "Sure. It will fit your fighting style better than the mithril dagger I gave you before." "Do you even still have it?" Bookie slightly nodded, pointing at his book form he was holding with his other hand. "Ah, right. Can't take it out because of the dungeon's restrictions? It would be nice if Perith could store equipment like you can." Perith was on the ground, his body still only halfway through reforming, but he shrugged anyway, and raised his right hand, summoning his weapon of light in the shape of Bookie's mithril dagger. Sofia giggled, "You know? Fair point." The matter of the glove closed, Sofia handed it to Bookie, who instantly put it on and started jumping in place like an excited kid, while Sofia absorbed the mimic's imprint. Since she hadn't been able to identify the mimic before killing it, the imprint couldn't go to Perith or she would lose track of his current imprint power. Destroyer's Nascent Monahart of Afinareth, /C tier / 9 months, 14 days, 9 hours. Imprint progress, 843.12/1200. Small catalyzer, 0/1. Keystone, 1/1. Effects, stats will be doubled. All stats plus 45%, C rank base. All stats plus 50%. Health plus 10,561. Stamina plus 10,000. Mana plus 43,751. Relocate core. Destroyer signature skill modifier. Speed shard, 1. Speed shard? And it's worth 100 imprint power? That means the mimics are comparable in power to the sunless amalgams. Now the question is, what does a speed shard do? It's not 1 of 1, it's just 1. The all stats bonus from the keystone imprint was added on the line below the regular all stats, so the list of effects isn't in the order in which I acquired the imprints. Then, with this being below the signature skill modifier, maybe it's for the signature skill too? I should ask Everel about signature skills in the next rest area. With that out of the way, it left the group with the best part of an encounter with a deadly foe for a necromancer, pilfering the bones. Sofia had to ask Bookie twice to get him to stop playing with the glove, as he was freezing the ground and sliding along the corridor, bringing the black fog dangerously close to Sofia and Perith at times. I get that you like it, but now isn't really the time, Bookie. The small, dejected undead stopped playing and his skeleton stopped moving as he took to actively controlling his book half instead, consuming the unsightly remains of the mimic in record time, before returning to Sofia. The new page could not appear because the book was already full, so she had to delete one. Let's get rid of the Sokuva skeleton, it's been pretty useless until now. The page of the big mammal's skeleton disappeared to be replaced by the disturbing skeleton of the mimic, which, on the drawing, looked like a bunch of bones clumped together inside of the outlines of a chest itself made of bones. 100,000 for the mimic skeleton. Not cheap. And it can't even do its signature trick and act like a real chest. It should still be my fastest skeleton, though. Nice find. After that, the group took a small break. Sofia reformed her bone plates and let her mana go back up while also refreshing the bone dominus blessings. Bookie also had to stop playing and rest because he had drained all his mist playing around with the glove, so much that the entire non-fogged section of the corridor was now covered in a thick layer of ice. Sofia backtracked all the way to the previous intersection and started exploring there. As they were exploring a new part of the dungeon, groups of sunless drones started appearing again. This time, instead of a straight line, the dungeon became a bit of a maze, and Sofia had to start mapping the place out. The group advanced at a slow pace, being very careful not to trigger another trap. Sofia had switched to feeding the drones imprints to Perith for a bit, since he needed the extra mana as well. Everything went rather well until 3 groups of sunless drones appeared at the same time at an intersection. One group was quickly disposed of, but the other 2 eventually collided and merged, leaving Perith, Sofia and Bookie face to face with an amalgam in the dungeon's narrow corridors. Sofia was ready. Encountering an amalgam was a possibility she had been expecting from the start. Before the monster could do anything, it was already covered in black rot. Bookie dismissed the paladins and fused himself with the high priest skeleton to be able to give Sofia magical shields. Perith dismissed his weapon to get ready, while Sofia activated the 3rd tier of rune-forged overlord. Since she could not afford to get hit even once by the amalgam's black lances, the plan was to kill it before it could use it. The way to do that was relatively simple, she just needed to break its main core, a clump of all the drone's small debris. Perith went all out from the start. Sanctified grounds, chains of light, shields of light, gravity well, he used everything to pin down the creature. He used his hand to grab the chains, trying to make them last even a second longer. It would not last long, but just long enough for Sofia to reach the creature. She opened its body up with a slice of the admin dagger, and viciously plunged her dragon scale arm in. Thanks to her very keen mana senses, she knew exactly where the amalgam's core was. The core started moving as her arm reached into the black insides, but she managed to grab it either way. She could feel her arm being assaulted from all sides. Bookie's mana shield had not held up for long. Her arm was beaten and battered by the shifting insides of the amalgam, but between the unbreakable arm guard and the title preventing chip damage, Sofia's health was intact. A black lance was starting to form over her head like a giant sword about to impale her. She crushed the core. The amalgam exploded into a cloud of mana, which instantly brought Sofia back to full with heat death. You have defeated Sunless Amalgam, LV 270, imprint intact. Sofia fell to her knees as she handed Perith his mana heart. This had been too close for comfort. Despite the fight being an expedited and clean victory, it had been a huge gamble. She was used to brushing against death already, but, perhaps because of the oppressive atmosphere of the dungeon, it hit her harder than usual. If the black lance came down, I was dead. Perith shook his skull and gave Sofia a head pat. Hey? What, do you not want the imprint? Perith grabbed his mana heart and absorbed the imprint, looking up at the ceiling while lightly shaking his skull again. What is it? Don't think you can go on acting all exasperated and not explain yourself. If the black lance came down, I was dead? Is that the issue? Finally Perith approved, pointing at Sofia and nodding. If the black lance? Would it kill me? Right, no, it wouldn't. Again, Perith nodded. He couldn't grin, but Sofia was pretty convinced that this was what he would be doing right then if he could. Well, it still would make the trial impossible, pretty much. But I would have lived. And still managed to kill the amalgam too. It was over the instant I managed to get my hand inside. Are you really comfortable with me getting maimed like that? Now Perith looked offended. All right. You win. I don't know what, but you win. Good job with holding the amalgam anyway. Let's do it like this again next time we encounter one. We still need 6 more to get you the skill. If it's a double amalgam, we go back to the defensive strategy and we do a mimic. The trap is far away, but we should be able to make it. Perith gave Sofia a head pat again. Let me update your mana heart sheet and we go again. Nascent mana heart of knowledge. Rank, C tier. Imprint power until next rank, 889.62/1200. Small catalyzer, 0/1. Effects, on use. All stats plus 45%, C rank base. Plus 8500 health. Plus 462 mana. Skill shard, 4/10, Sunless Amalgam skill. Relocate core. Arc light. As Sofia updated the system sheet, and before she could even stand back up, she heard a sinister sound from beyond the black fog. A laugh. Chapter 444, Family comes first. Not now. Runeforged Overlord is still. Mana, 262-312/417-100. The laughter continued, getting closer and closer. Mana, 257-213/417-100. We have 50 seconds if I use nothing else. Perith got the message and advanced, brandishing his shield. Sofia grabbed her scepter, which had been floating near her from the moment she dropped it to dig into the amalgam, and prepared for another close-quarter fight. Since she could not disable Runeforged Overlord, she might as well put that lost mana to good use. Bookie followed right behind her, refreshing his High Priest magic boons on both Sofia and Perith. The laughter stopped when the creature stepped out of the black fog. Sofia identified it before she could even get a good look. Sunless Homunculus, LV, Imprint Power, 20, Effect, Mana plus 2000. Could be worse. Sofia grasped 2 things from the identify, first being the monster's level was between 250 and 299, judging from the imprint power, and that this was not one of the smart Sunless like Everel and Terran, of which the monster-like unknown level was a dead giveaway. The situation was still rather bad, but far from hopeless. She summoned the Skull Choir, a wall of tubular sandworm skulls appearing behind her while Perith stood his ground. The creature attacked, mirroring Sofia's skulls. A wall of sharp lances of ice appeared above the short creature stepping out of the fog, and the temperature in the corridor instantly dropped to an unbelievable cold. A first lance hit Perith's shield, and while his health did not move, the shield of light started to freeze over and crack. Step back. Perith jumped back while Sofia rushed forward. Sofia brandished her shield and the rest of the ice lances came crashing down in a violent stream. From the moment she had seen the first ice lance hit Perith, Sofia knew she could take them, and as for their magical freezing effect, VPPV had long made her immune to that. When the last lance hit, Sofia's bone-covered shield was in bad shape, but she was unharmed. She finally got her first good look at the creature, which looked a bit like a miniature and sunless version of the Apostle of Dread she had once killed in Skirich, it was an unsettling being with twisted limbs, only vaguely resembling a human. Its magic failing, the things lunged at Sofia. A trident of light shot past Sofia and burst through the creature's head, stopping it just a meter away from her. Finally, the sandworm skulls were fully charged, they all released their attacks. The concentrated beams of energy slammed against the sunless head. When the beams died down, the creature's head was missing, but it was still struggling to get out of Perith's trident as if that did not matter. Sofia felt a stream of mana escape from the creature, which told her where its core was, and a huge fireball appeared above them. The temperature changed from freezing cold to untenable heat. Heat death. In a move that cost Sofia almost all of her remaining mana, she dispelled the fireball right before it exploded, and, now knowing where the creature's core was, she struck it with her scepter. Sparks of electricity coursed through the sunless body, and it exploded in a thin mist of mana. You have defeated Sunless Homunculus, LV 252, imprint intact. Skull Choir reached level 238. Sofia made haste to retrieve the imprint before her own mana ran out from Runeforged Overlord, and once that was done, she walked back with Perith and Bookie, eventually making it all the way back to the rest area. There was still no ambient mana, but at least it was far from the unexplored section. She could not just wait in the half-explored maze, with the possibility that monsters might encircle them. The group sat in a triangle in the entrance of the dungeon, and Sofia deactivated her armor to relax a bit. She untied her hair and used her fingers to untangle them. Wearing the bone armor helmet for a while never failed to create a mess. Should have taken a brush out before the dungeon started. She got Bookie to toss her a waterstone and started strategizing after having a drink. So we found a new type of sunless elemental mages. It was not too tough physically. I'm a good match against these. I have heat death to negate attacks, VPPV gives ice immunity and fire resistance, and I can get lightning resistance by quick starting a bolt cast. If we're ever in a group fight, let the homunculus to me. Bookie, you were fine as a support, but I'm thinking if we're against an amalgam again, it might be better to send the mimic with Perith instead of me. I feel like with its speed it should be able to avoid the Black Lance attacks. Perith knows what he's doing, so I don't really have anything to say. Perith and Bookie both approved with light nods. Say, Perith, you've grown a bit more expressive again, no? He shrugged in return. See? You would barely ever answer before. I don't get why, but you're more reactive these days. I like it. It feels a lot less like I'm a crazy bone lady talking to herself. Sofia stared into Perith's shimmering holy flames that stood for his eyes. She would never get bored of staring at them. Bookie is the same, too. Hey. Speaking of which. Shouldn't Bookie be able to talk? Both Perith and Sofia turned to stare at Bookie, who jumped back like he was surprised, hitting his skull against the wall in the process, and he threw his hands up in surrender. Perith could not speak due to his demigod peculiarities, but Bookie? He was one of Orator's creations. Was he a demigod of the deep? That seemed possible. To begin with, his entire existence was weird. How he had even developed a soul was still unexplained, but either way, even if he was a demigod, would his penalty be the exact same as Perith? That did not sound right. Meanwhile, Richard had skeletons like Florentia, who he created himself and who were completely capable of speech. Sofia stared at the innocent skeleton with narrowed eyes. Bookie. Have you been able to talk ever since you got a body and you just didn't? She questioned in a playful but accusatory tone. Bookie threw a hopeful glance at Perith, but no help came from the silent armored skeleton. In fact, he was staring even harder than Sofia was. Bookie tried to take another step back, but he was already against the wall. There's no way, right? Bookie? Perith had been sitting next to Sofia. He stood up. It was rare for Sofia to be able to feel Perith's emotions. The last time she had felt it strongly had been when she got reunited with Saria, but right then, she could feel Perith's burning curiosity in her chest. He glanced at her, and this time Bookie was looking at Sofia for help. I don't know what it is exactly that you want to do, but I trust you, go ahead, she told Perith with a smirk. Perith slowly walked up to Bookie. The small skeleton's legs were shaking. Perith raised a hand menacingly, the flames in his eyes burning brighter than ever. As the two skeletons held their positions, there was a long moment of silence. Bookie fell to his knees. Don't punish me. Coming out of nowhere, the soft voice of a scared young boy. Sofia had been drinking another sip of water. The surprise caused her to swallow wrong and start coughing. Are you kidding me? Perith lightly shook his skull, his hand came down, he patted Bookie's skull like he did Sofia's head earlier that day. Grabbing Bookie from under his arms, he carried him back to Sofia and sat down while still holding him. Sofia finally stopped coughing, complaining in her head about how dumb it was to still have reflexes like that when she didn't need to breathe. And now she was staring at Bookie again. At that moment, it was hard to tell what he was thinking, and for once, Sofia wished that her skeletons had an actual face that she could read. She sighed. Of course we are not going to punish you. When has that even ever happened? I'm sorry I didn't realize earlier. I was so focused on Perith when I spoke with Richard that we ended up barely even mentioning you. But still. Why would you hide it? Bookie looked uncertain. He looked at Sofia, then at Perith, then at Sofia again, then finally his jaw opened. He no longer sounded scared but more like a sad kid. I didn't want Brother Perith to be jealous. Oh. Are you mad? He asked, his voice almost dying in his non-existent throat. Sofia stood up, dusting her butt and legs as the floor was a bit dusty, and she took a step to be in front of Perith and Bookie. She looked at Perith. Are you jealous? Perith shook his head. I'm not mad, Perith, are you mad? Perith gave a gentle pat to Bookie's skull again. See? No one's mad. In fact, I'm happy that you can talk. You don't have to restrict yourself for Perith. I'm sure he'll be happy to listen to you too. Really? Of course really. You called him Brother Perith? Do you think he would not want to hear his little brother speak just because he himself can't? All right. Sorry, Bookie apologized. Come on now, cheer up, you can talk now, this is great news. Do you have any idea how many questions I have for you? I don't know anything. Hey. I did not even ask anything yet. But let's start with an easy question. What do you want your name to be? My name. Bookie repeated like he did not understand the question. Yes. Your name. I have been calling you Bookie forever now, but if you don't like. No. Bookie interjected. He freed himself from Perith's arms and stood between Sofia and Perith. Looking proudly at Sofia in the eyes, he declared the following. I am Bookie, the Book of Skeletons. I am not changing. Chapter 445, Sofia is a Sofia. After Bookie's declaration, Sofia, Perith, and Bookie were, again, sitting in a triangle. Alright, so. I have a few questions, do you mind? Sofia asked. I don't mind. Great. Where to start then? I got it, for a start, if Perith is Brother Perith, who am I? Bookie's lower jaw opened wide like this was the hardest, most shocking question of his life. After taking a few seconds to think about it, he turned to Perith for help, which did not help any more than the other times he had tried that move. Finally, he mustered a response, I think Sofia is Sofia. Proud of his answer, he nodded to himself, and Perith seemed to approve, reacting the same way. That's it. Sofia reacted, and Perith, you agree too? Again, Perith nodded. Come on, really? I mean. I don't know what I expected, but not nothing. Not older sister? Cousin? Aunt? Mom? Anything? Bookie took the time to think about it before he shook his skull. No. None of these work. Sofia is Sofia, he told her again, even more confidently than the first time. Somehow I feel a bit disappointed. That passing comment left Bookie agape and speechless. To appease him, Sofia changed the subject, what about orator? Uncle. The answer was instantaneous. Did you pick that up from me? Bookie shrugged. Don't remember. Uncle is uncle. I feel like calling the lords the four uncles is something I might have said. Well. It's better to maybe let that rest for now. I don't want orator to show up here and cause trouble for Everel. Then. Do you have a favorite page? Sofia asked next. Crowy. Bookie directly answered, after a second of reflection, and high priest powers, he added. Right. The ones we already use the most. I agree, Crowy is the best. What do you think of the mimic? Speed. But not very smart. Just like the real thing. Then, what can you say about the other summons we haven't tried yet? Bookie opened his book form which was sitting on his lap, and started flipping the pages. The Kikik are also not very smart. But they work well together, I think. It's better to summon guardians and soldiers at the same time, he explained, then he flipped more pages. Quartz Giant is very sturdy but a bit slow. He takes too much mist. And a lot of mana too, Sofia added. Speaking of which, do you have any control over the mana or mist costs? Bookie shook his skull, no. It depends on the skeleton size, mana, and their number of magic skills. The Quartz Giant has giant bones so it's expensive. Pretty much as I thought. What about the Fae? Bookie flipped the pages until he landed on the last one, the Midanisit Fairy. His fingertips glided over the page. The fairy lady is very mad. Very very mad. Mad. Yes. Mad mad. Like this much, he said, illustrating by spreading his arms. Why? No idea, Bookie flatly answered. But I can tell why she costs a lot of mist. Oh? Right, she is quite expensive for a small skeleton with no mana. Yes, it's because the fairy lady actually has a lot of skill. Really? How is that useful with no mana, though? Yes, but it's, only skills to be stronger, like Sofia's become not god skill. I think the fairy lady will be very strong but only in places with mana around, because her bones can't store mana. Wait. Become not god skill. Are you talking about VPPV? Sofia asked. Yes. You take all the god parts and become something but not god, so it's a become not god skill, right? Bookie explained like it was obvious. What is a not god, then? Do you actually know something I don't, Bookie? I know what Sofia knows. And my skeletons. You know what I know. Is that how you learned to speak? I don't really know, Bookie admitted in a shameful tone. No matter. What about you, Perith? You've always been able to understand my orders, so I assume you could have spoken from the start if not for your restrictions, right? Perith actually took a few seconds to think before he nodded as his answer. Just the fact that he answered put a smile on Sofia's face. It was the first time that Perith answered no matter what she said. Perhaps Bookie's newfound voice helped lift his restrictions a bit. It was impossible to tell why exactly he was more expressive than usual, but Sofia was glad for it. Then, one last question for you both, Sofia started, after that, you can ask questions too, Bookie. There's no reason why I should be the only one, right? Sofia's tone turned more solemn. So, my question is, are you guys happy to follow me? Are you fine with just following me forever? Bookie was stunned by the question, his voice came out a bit shaky. Does Sofia want us to leave? His voice broke by the end of the sentence. Bookie could shed no tears but he started audibly crying. What? No. Of course not. Sofia moved and grabbed Bookie like Perith had grabbed him before, holding him against her chest. There, don't cry, I'm never going to chase you away, don't worry. You promise? Bookie asked between two sobs. Yes. I promise. This has nothing to do with wanting you to leave. I want you to stay, you know. Then why? Bookie asked meekly, not understanding why Sofia would ask such a question. I'm just. You never had a choice. You had to follow me even if you didn't want to, up until now. I really don't like restricting people's freedom. You and Perith are people. It's only right that you get to choose what you want to do. Look at Alith and Iwarat, they do whatever they want. Then I want to stay. Bookie shouted. All right, Sofia answered with a smile, gently caressing his skull, I'm really happy you feel that way. Please don't leave. I will never leave Sofia. What a lucky Sofia I am to have such a cute skeleton with me, right? Thank you for staying with me. And, well, I already know the answer, but I still have to ask, what about you, Perith? Perith crossed his arms, slightly shaking his skull. Sofia could almost imagine him rolling his eyes and replying, I'm not going anywhere, idiot, if only he could. And it was really an idiotic question considering Perith was the same skeleton who categorically refused to ever harm Sofia even when she asked and who had let himself be killed to protect her on every occasion he could. So it's my turn to ask questions. Bookie asked from within Sofia's tight hug. Go ahead, Bookie. But you can usually hear my thoughts, right? Is there even anything you don't already know? Lots. I can hear, kind of, but not everything. I only hear Sofia's thoughts. When I need to hear them. When you need to. Yes? But it's my time to ask questions now. Right, sorry. Please do. Who do you like more? Oh lords. Sofia spent way too long thinking about what to answer. She did not want to make Bookie cry again. To think he would start with such an explosive question. Well, I should be honest. I love you both, but I guess Perith a bit more, she said carefully, preparing to console Bookie. But his reaction was not what she expected. I knew it, he said, sounding a bit peeved. I'll work harder to make Sofia love me more. It's not a competition. This once, Perith did not react visibly at all, and before Sofia could even come up with anything to say, Bookie came at her with another question. Can I get clothes? You want some? We can go find a good tailor for you in Vesperia after the trial if you want. How does that sound? Really? Thank you. It's nothing. I'll get you and Perith anything you want as long as I can afford it. My money is our money, you guys both worked really hard for it, haven't you? Anything else that you want? Bookie was silent for a bit, only coming up with a weak, I'll think about it. What about you, Perith? Anything you want? Sorry, I never asked until now. Surprisingly enough, Perith was already ready to answer, instantly summoning his light shield. It took the form of a kite shield with a crest representing a castle. Castle? Is it about Zangdar? Sofia asked. And this time, Perith did not answer. It could mean that he couldn't, but it could also mean that the answer was neither yes nor no, and that he couldn't reply with his usual head movements. There's something that you want in the Zangdar castle. Sofia tried. This time the answer was no. I think I understand, brother Perith, Bookie chimed in. Sofia turned her attention to him and let him continue. He wants a home. That's all it is? Sofia looked up at Perith again, seeing him nod contentedly. I see. Thanks for the insight, Bookie, you're very helpful. Well, we're going to check on Zangdar as soon as the trial is over. If the castle is still there, let's make it our permanent home, all right? You can both have your own room. Bookie cheered while Perith barely reacted. The truth was Perith always knew this had already been in Sofia's plans for a while now. But since she had asked what he wanted, he had truthfully answered. Anything else? Sofia asked Bookie again. Hey. Or, right. I wanted to ask about the strange things Sofia does sometimes. Strange things? Yes. I don't understand, like when you take bones and you sculpt them into the shape of a big boy's pea. Sofia's iron grip slammed Bookie's jaws shut. Enough questions for today. We have a dungeon too. Chapter 446, All My Homies Hate Mazes. Sofia punched a frozen sunless drone, smashing it to pieces. You have defeated sunless drone, LV-233, imprint intact. Before her, 2 destroyer skulls from the Skull Choir were cutting up more drones. As long as it was just 2 skulls, she could maintain them indefinitely even in this dungeon with no ambient mana. A dozen more drones appeared from the fog. Shit! More from my side, she called out while putting her back to the wall. Bookie turned around at Sofia's call and launched a ray of frost with his new glove, completely freezing over the first 3 sunless drones on the way and slowing down the ones behind. They were currently very deep in the maze-like section of the dungeon, and the drones came as an almost continuous flow from all directions. Currently they were at a T-shaped junction, with the mimic skeleton handling the drones from the back, Perith from the left, and Sofia from the right. Bookie was standing in the middle giving support with his frost magic glove. They could not afford to stop calling the number of drones for a second. Drones themselves were not all that dangerous, they could not even hurt Sofia as long as she kept the impervious title, but their potential to turn into amalgams was what made them a threat. The frost rays could prevent that, giving them the time they needed in an emergency. You have defeated Sunless Drone, LV-224, imprint intact. You have defeated Sunless Drone, LV-212, imprint intact. You have defeated Sunless Drone, LV-238, imprint intact. The sunless debris were already starting to pile up around them. Until now they had always managed to get the flow of drones to stop for a bit to grab the imprints and move on, but not this time. The more they killed, the more came out of the black fog like an endless stream. We can't stay here, fuck the imprints, Let's go for Perith's side. Bookie froze the drones on his and Sofia's side once more to gain some time, and the group all went for the path Perith was fighting in. The corridor was too narrow for them to all go to the front, so Sofia and Bookie stayed back while the Flying Skull Choir and the tall mimic moved up to fight alongside Perith. With its long and thin legs, the mimic skeleton was really great at fighting in these tall but narrow corridors. It could easily move around and maneuver through the group to help wherever they needed. Sofia had realized that the skulls from the choir could still fly despite the dungeon's restriction, just like she could still make bones levitate with bone dominus. That could likely be useful later, but for now, they struggled to get through the maze. Now in a single corridor instead of a three-way junction, it was easier to handle the flow of drones, and the group managed to start making progress again. Sofia was busy handling the rear guard when she heard someone start crying behind her. Her first reflex was to look back at Bookie, but he was still fighting alongside her. It was not his voice. Homunculus! Rotate, she shouted as she activated the spine of the Black Sun. The mimic and the Skull Choir rushed back to handle the backside with Bookie while Sofia ran to Perith's position. There, the small form of a humanoid sunless homunculus walked out of the fog. Thick vines started growing along the maze walls. Plant magic! The homunculus was behind a large group of almost 20 drones, which Perith was struggling to dispose of and keep away from each other with a long spear and his flying shields of light. A flash of light from Sofia covered the drones and walls in rot. The plant magic of the homunculus was growing at the same rate the rot consumed it, rendering it completely useless. The homunculus itself had somehow escaped the rot. It dispelled the plant magic, stumbling at it suffered some backlash, and started channeling another spell. Sofia could feel the mana but she did not see anything. Perith was still killing the drones between them and the homunculus one by one, but there were still too many blocking the path. Sofia could jump over if she wanted, but she would be surrounded. Even if the drones' attacks couldn't harm her, they could still dogpile her until the homunculus finished her off with spells. The homunculus finished channeling its spell. Sophie felt it coming, she activated Heat Death. 70,000 points of her own mana flew out and intercepted the invisible projectiles curving over the pack of drones. The attack was dispelled, and harmless fresh air currents displaced by the attack were all that reached Sofia and Perith. Was it wind magic? That would explain why I couldn't see it. Finally, the channeling of spine of the Black Sun was over, the sword whip materialized on top of Sofia's scepter, and she swung it while directing the whip past all the drones with bone dominus directly hitting the homunculus in the back line. You have defeated Sunless Drone, LV 202, imprint intact. You have defeated Sunless Drone, LV 223, imprint intact. The solar burst killed a few of the closest drones, but the homunculus looked unharmed. It was already preparing its next spell. 3 balls of raging electricity appeared in the air above the homunculus. Perith, back! Sofia stuck to the side to allow Perith to step back as she dispelled the spine and started casting an angel's bolt instead, then she took her place in front of him. Streams of lightning struck out from the homunculus magic, destroying even the drones in their path, and hitting Sofia with loud thunderclaps. The lightning storm lasted for a good 5 seconds, the lightning resistance that casting angel's bolt offered coupled with the impervious completely negated the damage, although Sofia couldn't move under the constant assault. She kept channeling her bolt through the storm. Finally the balls of electricity ran out of juice, and the lightning died down. Already, the homunculus started channeling something else, but by now, Sofia's bolt had grown enough. My turn. It was a 30,000 mana explosive bolt. Not the most powerful by a long shot, but Sofia knew enough about the power of explosions in enclosed spaces. The bolt flew straight at the creature, hit an invisible magic shield that was surrounding the homunculus, and exploded. Sofia brandished her shield. It didn't matter if she was in the explosion radius, that kind of bolt couldn't hurt her, she was more worried about Bookie and his mimic in the back, so she did her best to reduce what would reach them. The heat and shockwave washed over her. When the light died down, the homunculus was struggling to stand up, his mana shield broken. With nothing in the way anymore, Sofia rushed forward and slammed the creature with her scepter, sending sparks of electricity flying. The creature struck back but its stretchy black arms rebounded against her bone dominus blessed armor. The scepter came down again and again until it landed a solid hit on the homunculus core. You have defeated Sunless Homunculus, LV 278, imprint intact. Sofia couldn't even celebrate her victory, as more drones stepped out of the fog. Perith yanked Sofia back by the wings and took her place, his saber cutting the drones to pieces. 3 hours of constant fighting later, and after mapping out almost the entire place, they found the exit of the maze, a hole in the ceiling in a random dead end. As she climbed out of the hole into a new room of the dungeon, Sofia immediately felt a difference in the air, ambient mana. Finally a resting area. About time. Parith helped pull her up, then Bookie, and once they were all there, the hole in the ground disappeared. Sofia eyed her stats and grumbled. Health, 73 200/85 980. Stamina, 3152/21 047. Mana, 38 556/417 100. Losing 5000 health to a dumb trap. Seriously. Despite all the constant fighting, what had eventually bested her was a very simple trap. A big block of stone fell from the ceiling, right on top of her head. The bone armor's helmet had limited the damage to a broken skull and neck, which she had been able to easily fix with bone dominus in spite of the no healing restriction of her mana heart, but her health hadn't climbed back up. The worst part was, she had felt it coming, but had decided not to move because she had been protecting Parith from a sunless homunculus freezing ice spear's attack. She thought she could shrug the hit off, but it turned out that gravity was still a strong foe. They had dealt with 5 homunculi in total and 1 amalgam, but aside from the trap incident, these battles had all gone well for them. As the group sat down to rest, a nice and relaxing background music started playing. Good going. I didn't expect you to find the secret exit, you know. Sofia took off her helmet before she answered. Secret exit? What secret exit? The hole? You mean there was a regular exit? Yeah, you missed it, though. You were supposed to go through the paths with the fewer enemies to find it, not the paths with more. But no matter, I'm glad you're here already. You just skipped the middle third of the dungeon basically, welcome to the end game. Just like that? Music to my ears. You know, if I had a say in it, the dungeon would be a single room with the boss and that's it. What's the point of putting your strongest fighter at the very end? There's a reason people normally lock the front door of their house and not the door to their bedroom. Anyway, how'd you like my property until now? There's some nice challenges to be had, wouldn't you say? I have plenty of things to say, but mainly I would like a word with whoever designed that falling rock trap. Aha, it's a good one, isn't it? Actually has a few kills, believe it or not. Speaking of which, you could have climbed the hole it fell through too, that also led here. Sofia sighed at the revelation. There had been a good hour of non-stop fighting between the rock incident and now. At least it's over. Done with this giant headache of a maze. Everel was silent. Hoy? Everel? You better not be serious. Chapter 447, Who Makes the Ink Flow? Well, you know. Mazes aren't so bad. Unrelated to that, say, how about you stay in the rest area for like, 10 hours or so? Ya got me. Sure. Anything else? I mean, aren't you the one who's supposed to be asking questions now? I have plenty of questions, always. But everything gets censored always, so what's the point in even trying? It's not like I actually need more knowledge now. Unless you're up to tell me more about what the Sunless are and how you can afford to throw thousands of drones at my face for hours like they're disposable wooden toy soldiers. Sofia heard Everel grumble, then say something that came out all scrambled. Fuck. Yeah, can't say shit, sorry. Actually. You think you can bypass it somehow? I mean, scribe's in my head, so it's not like I can sidestep the censoring, but there are holes in the protected subjects sometimes, you just gotta find the right angle of approach and... Sofia interrupted her mid-sentence, wait, what was that about scribes? I'm interested in that also. Sorry for cutting you. Don't mind, I've dealt with less polite challengers you know. Of course the topic of scribes itself is pretty well protected too, but I do know more than your average gal. After a good while of trial and error and getting censored left and right, Everel eventually said something that Sofia could actually hear. You get a tier 0 scribe when you're born. Sofia immediately perked up. That wasn't censored. Really? Then the scribe hierarchy is fine? What about ... No, I couldn't understand this one at all, Sofia answered. Too bad, well, doesn't really matter. Are you happy with your own scribe? Everel asked. I love my scribe, he's great. He? I see. Well, anyway, yeah, that's what's most important. Since the hierarchy is all I'm allowed to explain, then let's get through that. Most of this stuff I got to learn when I picked up this job, so I didn't think I could share, but had. So, as I said, you get your tier 0 scribe when you're born, basic stuff. Alright. Then, the scribe gets upgraded to tier 1 when you start getting high-level classless skills, using magic, or at the latest when you level up from a kill for the first time. Mine must have been upgraded pretty early then. I had a pretty high-level shenanigans skill as a kid. Can you explain the difference in tiers? Whatever you imagine is probably correct. Basically, they get better at what they do and get allocated more resources. I'm afraid I can't explain in more detail. Get better at what they do and get allocated more resources. I wonder which one it is that you need, Mr. Scribe. What about tier 2? Sofia asked to keep the conversation flowing. Usually you get your tier 2 upgrade at the end of this trial because a tier 1 scribe can't really keep up with all the bullshit that comes with having a mono heart. But you can also get it early if your class has particularly tricky skills or you get a specialization. I got mine early because of an issue with my skills, so that tracks. What about you? You're at tier 2 also? Everel was silent for a second, then her voice came again. Sorry, was checking something. And no, mine is tier 3. Tier 3 scribes are only for system employees and for the nutcases who make it to level 500, basically. They're entirely irrelevant for basically anyone else, she explained in a light-hearted tone. Irrelevant? Can you tell any more? Imagine having a mithril blade and using it to chop onions, it's kinda like that. Overqualified for the task, got it. Let's not mention that I cut my food with an admin's divine essence dagger. Any other way to get that tier 3 upgrade anyway? Sofia asked as innocently as she could. That sounds unlikely unless you manage to get the high scribes to accept that request somehow. You can forget about it, girl. Even for an outlier like you, it'd be hard to contact them, let alone get them to help. They helped before, Sofia interjected, and Everel made a surprised sound. When I used a scroll of assisted inspiration, Sofia added, you know about those. Oh, right. Yeah. That's a way to get to them, maybe. If your request is outlandish enough, they might have to step in. I'm guessing the high scribes are tier 4, by the way. Nope, that would be tier 5. Tier 4 and tier 5 scribes aren't managing anyone, they manage the system itself. Ah, that's probably censored. No, I heard everything there, Sofia confirmed. That's surprising. Let's see how far I can push it. So, tier 4 scribes are between the angels and the archangels in the corporate ladder, they ... Sofia shook her head. The end was cut out, I did not hear anything after the ladder. I thought that would have been alright to say considering the rest. Hey. So that's it for tier 4, I guess. As I said, archangels are above that, on par with the trial overseers like my boss Kyle. Finally you got the big 3, the 3 tier 5 high scribes, they. Everel suddenly stopped speaking. So Kyle and Sen are on a similar power level with the archangels? Maybe that's just in terms of authority within the system. Everel. Ah. Blanked out. I think that's all I can say for real this time. I don't really know a lot more about the high scribes anyway, so you're not missing out on much. The discussion about scribes ended there, and after a while, Everel showed up in person, bringing comfortable armchairs for everyone, and they sat around in the rest area having a nice chat, in complete disregard of the time and place. Since there had been a lot of Sofia asking questions until then, Everel started asking Sofia about herself and about news from the outside world. It seemed the Sunless girl was well informed when it came to the system and the trial itself, but she talked about Viliadrin like she had never gone there. That much would not have been that surprising if one assumed Everel had been born around her current level and on Cerberus Beta, but from what Sofia could glimpse of her, it seemed she had a life somewhere else prior to her employment. The cogs started turning in Sofia's head, and after a while, during a lull in the conversation after Sofia explained her familial situation, she went on the offensive, practicing her best non-skill-based poker face. What about your own family? Is Terran your brother or lover or something like that? Terran? No way. I mean, he's a fine dude, but we're just work colleagues, you know. My family, hey. Haven't seen them in a long time, she said in a melancholic tone, almost sighing, the pendant eye thing on her chest drooping a little. Ah, bad topic? Sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. It's okay. Everel suddenly stopped there, her pitch-black body limping slightly before she regained her composure. Did she just get blanking out censored? When reminiscing about her family. That's some suspicious shit right there. Why would that ever get censored? Everel then changed the subject as if nothing happened. By the way, how's the glove? I see you gave it to the little skelly. Bookie had been completely silent all this while, just minding his own business, but when the subject of his glove came up, he answered before Sofia. It's super great, he said, raising both his hands in the air. Everel turned to Sofia, stunned. It can speak. I know, right? I was shocked to learn that too. Of course I can. I'm a smart skeleton. Bookie added from his seat. Damn, I wish my underlings could speak too. It gets a bit lonely on this frickin' moon, Everel complained before slouching in her seat. Lady Dungeon Master, is the other part of the set also in a mimic? Bookie asked. Everel fixed her posture and turned toward Bookie. Sorry, little guy. The left glove was in the middle level y'all just skipped. Bookie's jaw hung low from the sudden shocking revelation. His bones detached and he became nothing but a messy pile of bones rolling off the armchair, clanking on the floor. Sofia could tell he was perfectly fine, but Everel jumped out of her seat, panicked. Little guy. Sofia was comfortably sitting in her chair. I think you hurt his feelings, she explained without an ounce of emotion. She was trying really hard not to burst out laughing. I know, I mean. Everel started. After a few intense seconds of internal debate, she managed to get her act together. I'll give it to you if you beat the dungeon. Bookie's bones came back together on the spot, and he started jumping all around the rest area, throwing his hands up in celebration and chanting, Miss Dungeon is the best. Who knew that a little Bookie's feelings was all it takes to move her? System employee or not, sunless or not, a woman's a woman after all. That's right. My Bookie is the cutest skeleton kid. Chapter 448, Do. The discussion only lasted a few minutes more before Everel excused herself. She stood up from her chair and stretched. I gotta get back to work. I managed to negotiate something with the higher UPS while we were chatting. I'll be preparing that, so just stay here until I come get you three in a few hours to start the last stretch of the dungeon. Did you go out of your way to spare us from another maze? You did not have to, really, but thank you, I guess, Sofia thanked her. I'll explain when I come back, don't rejoice too early, but yet, no more maze, Everel confirmed as she spun around to leave. See ya in a bit. The floor opened under Everel and closed back up right after she fell without a sound. There she goes. It's hard to believe she's out to kill us when she's acting so relaxed. I think she's a nice person, Bookie commented from his oversized chair, feet dangling back and forth in the air. I won't deny that. But if she ends up being the dungeon boss, we will have to beat her up, you realize that? It's fine as long as she survives like the sword man. Sofia approved. True, Terran survived just well. It really makes me wonder what the Sunless really are. I have my doubts, but I think, at the very least, Everel used to be human. Some things were suspicious, but stretching after staying still for a long time? That's not something someone who was born with a body made entirely of mana would naturally do. And I don't know how the Sunless reproduce, but I don't think that would go a long way into having maternal instincts like she has. She was really weak to Bookie's little trick, and that's with him looking like he does. Still. She's actually just really nice. She even left us the chairs when she left. I feel bad for overanalyzing her so much. Bookie, Perith. I'm gonna take a nap. Wake me up when she's back. About an hour later, Sofia opened her eyes. I knew I was worrying over nothing. She's not playing some game. Makes me feel doubly bad, but I had to be sure. Since Sofia knew that Everel could hear everything she said in the rest area, she had placed a bait of faking falling asleep. If the rest areas and Everly's pleasant personality were traps meant to lower one's vigilance, then being openly vulnerable like Sofia falling asleep was the perfect moment for her to launch a surprise attack. But nothing had come of it. The rest area was truly safe, it seemed, and Everly's laid-back attitude was genuine. From this point on, Sofia joined Bookie and Perith in their ongoing game consisting of putting bones into a pile and trying to pull them out one by one without making the pile collapse. The bones used for this were the 4 withered vampire skeletons playing dead, which Bookie had summoned on his own accord. Some time later, Everel entered the room again, a random wall opening to let her in this time. You guys are playing while I bust my ass out there working for you. Unbelievable, she greeted them as she walked in with a big sack in hand. Anyway, dungeon's ready. Let's get a move on. Want to join? Sofia asked as she pulled another bone from the pile. She was losing at the moment, with Perith far in the lead, so having another player join might save her from the last place. Are you serious? Everel asked with a short laugh. Bookie stared at her for a bit and that was all it took to convince her. Fine, but just for a bit. While Everel played, and she was terrifyingly good at the game, much to Sofia's dismay, she also explained what was going to happen with the last third of the dungeon. So, I was meant to be the final boss for you guys, but crudely speaking, it's just stupid, even for hell difficulty or whatever. There's no timeline in which you lot beat me as you are right now. Completely impossible. Aren't you underestimating us a bit too much? We have a pretty good track record when it comes to beating impossible opponents, Sofia answered while she looked for the next bone to pull out of the pile. I know. You told me about the destroyer, and I managed to get some data from Kyle, so I know about victory too. I still don't have the data on your full skill set and such, but no matter what I'm saying is, there's really no way, even for you. You're that confident even knowing what the crown on my head means. Yet. Let me put it into perspective for you. Currently, you could utterly trash someone at my level with a low-quality mana heart. For someone with a regular to good mana heart, with both Perith and Bookie with you, you might struggle but maybe still win, depending on the person. For someone like me with an SSS rank mana heart with a keystone? You stand no chance. I'm not saying this lightly. Whoa, I see I'm not the only overachiever in the room. Impressive. Well, yeah, the system doesn't employ just anyone. But, if you're so certain there's absolutely no chance, why was I meant to fight against you in the first place? That does not exactly sound very fair. If you're telling me my odds against you are worse than my odds were against the actual god of victory, then yet, I would rather give up on the dungeon now and go back to the regular trial. Well, I've been wondering about that too. I wasn't even aware of this shit until about when you started fighting the mimic and I got new orders from above. Been busy communicating with Kyle and Dash, since then. Everyone on my side agrees that the scribes who gave the orders had to be really deranged to think this was a good arrangement. I don't follow everything but that means you're not meant to be the boss for the dungeon even in hell difficulty, and the scribes tried to change that last minute. I'm not. I never fight here. I manage the dungeon, and that's it. The regular boss is one of my summons. The normal setting for hell difficulty should be 3 of them plus 5 homunculi in the back. And I think that you could maybe beat that, but if I fight directly? No. So the tier 5 scribes are trying to make me fail here, is what you're saying. Someone is trying to make you fail, for sure. I can't say who, though, but I don't think the tier 5 scribes would do that, they could just dash if they wanted. Corruption within the system, hey. I'm honestly not too surprised. I guess Sen moving us to the draconic system wasn't enough. So my enemies within the system are tier 4 scribes? But Sen couldn't do anything to fix the issue at the root despite being supposedly higher ranking? Are these scribes allied with scripture? It was also scribes who helped summon connections with the assisted inspiration scroll. The archangel even said that the scribes had gone overboard with their help. So, are the scribes having an internal war with me as a proxy? This is turning out to be a lot more serious than just having to deal with a dirtbag god. After organizing her thoughts, Sofia gave Everel a polite bow. Thanks for the help, I won't forget it. Just doing my job. Kyle's busy making sure that this kind of stuff doesn't happen again right now, so you can just continue the trial as normal. Will we get to fight the regular hell difficulty boss, then? Nope, you still get to fight me. Hey. But with a twist. Everel added, sounding very proud of herself. She turned to grab the big bag she had brought with her, and threw it to Sofia. Sofia grabbed the bag and looked inside. There was a wooden case in there, she could feel magic items inside, 6 of them. Come on. Open it. Sofia opened the box, revealing an assortment of 6 enchanted blue glass balls resting on a velvet lining. And that is a personal creation. I'm lending them to you for our fight. You can identify them to get a bit more info, but I'll explain the rules when we're in the actual boss arena. Ah. I've been wanting to use these for so long, you have no idea. Everel explained, looking and sounding really excited. Summoning orb, a special spatial storage item meant to store summoned beings. You need to throw it at one of your summons to store them, and the same motion is needed to release them. Its enchantments will bring it back to your hand after throwing. A singular summoning orb can store up to one summoned entity. A summoned group, such as a school of fish, counts as one entity. This summoning orb can hold up to 200 mana worth of summoned entities. A quick scan of all the orbs showed that they each allowed for a different amount of mana's worth of summons, with the 200 mana being the lowest of and 100 million being the highest. By the time Sofia looked away from the description, Everel had produced a second box out of nowhere, which she held under her arm. Are we meant to throw glass balls at each other's summons? Sofia guessed. Aha, good try, but no. Follow me, I'll explain, I'm sure you're going to love where this is going. Everel turned around and left the rest area, through the doors for once. And as she did, the calm background music of the rest area stopped and a tenser, more dramatic tune started playing. Already far into the next room, Everel turned back and shouted. What are you waiting for? Come on guys! It's time to duel! Chapter 449, There are no bad summons. Sofia followed Everel past a long straight corridor and into a huge round coliseum. Several rows of seats overlooked the arena, all filled by silent sunless drones. In the middle of the round coliseum was a square platform, and there was a small ritual circle on two of its sides. That's a lot of drones. Forget the twin-headed amalgam, this could be the birth of a 100-headed amalgam. Everel pointed at the ritual circle, this is where we're going to stand while our summons fight. But more about that later. Let me first explain the rules. Just to clarify, what happens if we lose? Sofia asked. In that case, I'll gloat about how I'm the stronger summoner, then you'll be thrown out of the dungeon with no rewards, and that's about it. If you win, it's like you defeated the boss, I'll even give you the regular imprint and all. Alright, sounds good. How do we do this? Well, there are quite a few rules, so let's get through each game element one by one. Starting with the orbs. I already get what they're for, more or less. You get to put your summons in them. We each have an identical set of orbs, the summons we put in them will be our fighters. Each of them has a card draw value, with the weakest orb having a value of 6 and the highest a value of 1. Card draw. I'm getting there. So, each time you use an orb to summon a fighter, you get to draw that many cards. If you bring out your weakest summon, for example, you draw 6 random cards at the end of the round. I'll get to what cards are for later. Alright. So if I put Perith in the strongest orb, summoning him makes me draw 1 card. So far so good. Then it's just duels. Everel shook her featureless head, not quite, so to explain the goal of the game, we will both have 10 health points. When you lose a round, you lose 1 health point. The first to 0 health or first to have no fighters left loses the game. So you can lose a round without the summon dying, I imagine? Is it timed? Again, not quite. See the square arena? The fights will happen there. If your summon leaves the arena, you get to reuse them later, but you lose the round. Else, the victor is decided by death. Also, fighters are not allowed to leave the arena for the first 10 seconds of a duel. Sofia detached a bit of her bone armor to write the rules on. To be honest, I expected something simpler. But this is still fine. Then what about the cards? Cards can be played during the rounds, and they allow you to use special actions, such as using your own skills to help the fighters, or creating obstacles in the arena for cover, for example. You can only ever have 3 cards in hand, so if you draw 6 at the start of the round, you need to throw out 3 of them right away. You can also keep them between rounds if you want. It sounds like managing the cards is just as important as having good summons, and knowing which summon to use when is also crucial. I'm starting to understand how this is supposed to play out. Are we done with the rules? Almost. 2 more rules. First of all, you are not allowed to interfere with the duels in any way except by giving orders or using cards. No magic, nothing, your passives will all be deactivated. If you cheat, you instantly lose the game. And, secondly, when you summon a fighter, no matter if you win or forfeit the round, if it lives, you cannot use it again before you use all the other available summons at least once. This is called the summon penalty rule. Sofia finished writing all the rules on her small bone slate. I think I have a good grasp on the rules. But I have a few questions. Yes. Do you already know what the card effects are, and can I have some time to decide what to summon? Yes to both. You will get a private room to summon your fighters and store them in the orbs. I won't get to see what you choose. The cards I designed myself, so I already know them. Some of them have random elements, though, and which ones we draw is also completely random, so while I have a slight advantage, this should be fine. I have also never actually played the game, so. I see, it's fine, you are the boss, so I did kind of expect you to have a few advantages. Also I see the black fog has disappeared, is that normal? Everel giggled, yes, the dungeon restrictions need not to apply here, the others will also be lifted in a bit. Ah, also, last precision, you can only put your summon in the orb. No giving them items or anything like that. Done with the explanations, Everel brought Sofia to a large side room under the rows of seats where she could take her time to summon her fighters. Well, guys, how do we do this? Perith goes into the strongest orb, right? Yes. Bookie approved. Perith, who had grown back to his usual huge size, seemed to agree as well. Sofia nodded, that's one orb settled, then, I'm counting on you. Now to fill the 5 others. Sofia needed to think carefully. The weakest orb allowed to draw 6 cards, so it was a powerful tool to help win the following round, but the round where its 200 mana summon was brought out was almost a guaranteed loss unless Everel also used her 200 mana orb at the same time. The order in which I use the orbs is also important, since you have to use them all before reusing them. Every round after the 6th will follow a predetermined pattern. What we choose now will decide what happens next. Bookie, any suggestions? I have an idea or two, but I think you know best, Sofia. Let's hear it. We need to be smart about this, and there are a few things we need to test with the orbs before we can decide. The game has already begun. Orb list. Orb 6, 6 card draws, 200 mana capacity. Orb 5, 5 card draws, 1000 mana capacity. Orb 4, 4 card draws, 25000 mana capacity. Orb 3, 3 card draws, 50000 mana capacity. Orb 2, 2 card draws, 100,000 mana capacity. Orb 1, 1 card draw, 100 million mana capacity, Perith. Sofia walked out of the preparation room with only Bookie at her side. She had deactivated her armor and was wearing her party dress from her time at the academy. A belt of bone was slung over chest, holding the 6 summoning orbs. Of course, she still held her scepter with her dragon scale arm, but these she never really took off. The sunless drones in the audience were all still silently looking from above, and Everel was waiting in her own ritual circle on the other side of the square arena. Nice style. Everel called out from her side of the arena, but that won't help you beat me. Let's see about that. Sofia stepped into the ritual circle on her side. Immediately, the background music changed into something more intense. A system window appeared in front of Sofia's eyes. Dungeon Master Everel wants to duel. Yes/no. Of course yes. The lighting changed in the Colosseum, the seats were plunged into the shade while strong lights shone onto Sofia and Everel. Meanwhile, Bookie looked just happy to be there, shaking his skull to the music. Choose 5 non-summoning skills to be shuffled into your card deck. 0/5, you have 4.58 minutes left. With these messages, cards representing Sofia's skills appeared in front of her. They all had cute pictures but no description or title. On the other side, Sofia saw Everel tap 5 times in the air. She had decided on her own skills in a second. Interesting. My skills are pretty easy to recognize from the drawings. Except this black card. What's that? Oh. Could it be heat death? That's a must. Sofia tapped on the black card and it disappeared. 1/5. Alright, alright. Next, Runeforged Overlord and Bone Dominus. That's 3. This leaves 2 slots. Angel Bolt is a strong contender, Graveyard, and Iridian Rot as well. Blessing of the Deep could be alright and Spine too, but I think they're a bit weaker. Let's go with Bolt and Rot. Sofia tapped on the card with a drawing of blue lightning and the card with a wasteland covered in black rot. 5/5. Cards confirmed. Deactivating auras. Sofia felt her magic being tampered with, her mana could no longer escape the confines of the ritual circle. Raising command tower. The ground under the ritual circle shook, and it rose. Sofia and Bookie were now on top of a 3 meters tall pillar overlooking the square arena. Metallic guardrails also appeared around the ritual circle. It was the same on Everel's side. Finally, 2 big sunless amalgams appeared in the arena. Their shape shifted and morphed until they resembled a giant Sofia and a giant Everel. They walked to take place near the respective person they copied. What are those for? As Sofia thought that, a counter appeared above the Everly-shaped amalgam. 10/10. Looking at the amalgam on her side, there was a similar counter. Bookie said out loud what Sofia just understood, it's the health points. A stack of illusory cards appeared in front of Sofia with a small message above it. Remaining draw, 0, please select your fighter for round 1. Everel spoke to Sofia from her tower on the opposite side of the arena. The sound transmission module is on so we can speak normally, no need to shout. Are you ready, Sofia? I'm more than ready. I've already picked my first fighter. Great. Then grab your orb and let's fight. Everly's own summoning orbs were floating around her, she raised a hand and an orb flew to it. Sofia grabbed the third orb on her belt. Orb 3, 3 card draws, 50,000 mana capacity. A countdown appeared in the air in the middle of the arena. 3, 2, 1. Throw. Sofia and Everel threw their orbs into the arena. The music's tempo was kicked up a notch, and with 2 flashes of light, the fighters appeared. On Sofia's side, the 3 skeleton Templars. On Everly's side, a single tiny humanoid sunless. It looked like one of the homunculus, and had a white sunless eye on its torso. The fighters could not fight yet. Sofia could feel the Templars being unable to move while the orb's enchantments brought it back to her hand. Right, Sofia, one last thing, there's one spell you're allowed to use anytime. You can use Identify. The restrictions on the fighters were lifted, and the battle started. Sofia identified the small sunless. Orb power 5 to 1000 mana, leave 299 sunless architect. The small sunless rose an arm and the Templar's charge was stopped by a tall wall rising from the ground. Chapter 450, Power of the Cards. Left and right, light severance, middle, charge. The Templars followed Sofia's orders, the 2 on the sides charged their ranged attack while the middle one's armor started to glow. More walls sprung around the sunless, forming a sort of protective cocoon. The middle Templar charged ahead, shoulders slamming through the wall and instantly letting himself fall into a disorderly pile of bones. The 2 other Templars jumped to the middle where their shoulders met and they both released their slashes of light through the opening the first Templar created. They had a direct line of sight to the sunless architect. The blades of light shot forward, and another wall rose to meet them, closer to the sunless. She's trying to wait out the 10 seconds. It's possible that the architect lacks the power to kill the Templars. Does she intend to have it escape when the leaving restriction runs out and take the loss? The middle Templar reformed and prepared to charge ahead again. I'll charge one by one. Give it a half-second delay, we need to kill this thing fast. If all it can do is raise walls then we just have to get through them. The Templars got in place and charged one after the other, more and more walls were raised in their way. Bookie chimed in from the side, why not have them jump over? Too dangerous. Think about all the things Arian was able to do with his invoked walls. Being airborne against an enemy like this is nothing but bad news. While Sofia and Bookie chatted, one of the Templars tried and failed to reach the sunless, and the 10 seconds of mandatory fighting were over. As Sofia half expected, the sunless made no attempt to leave, it kept creating walls all over. It's creating a real mess on the battlefield. The 2 other Templars had been ordered by Sofia to stop, spread out to the corners of the arena, and start channeling their holy smite. It would take 25 more seconds for the spell to reach completion. Meanwhile, Sofia was the guide of the one fighting Templar, giving him directions and live updates on the sunless position which was now running through his self-made labyrinth of walls. Keep it occupied at all costs. With her observation, Sofia had understood one rule of the architect's magic, it needed a direct line of sight to create walls. The counterpart to that was that these walls were pretty sturdy and had a ridiculous casting time. Sofia could also tell that the small sunless was starting to run out of mana as the chase continued. The chasing Templar managed to reach the running sunless. The Templar's great sword came down, the sunless dived to the side, but a bit late, the sword sliced through the sunless left arm. Another wall rose between the sunless and the Templar. The Templar had no mana left for another charge, leaving him with a single option to keep up the pressure, he jumped over the wall. No. As the Templar jumped up, the wall he tried to jump over rose higher, blocking his path, and an horizontal floor appeared from the high wall, slamming into the airborne Templar. The skeleton was sent flying out of the arena. The second it was out of the square boundaries of the arena, it froze in the air with a blaring sound, and a red light shone on the frozen Templar. "One down," Everel said smugly from her side. "Shit, did I lose a health point?" Sofia checked her sunless effigy, but it still read 10/10 and the fight beneath was still ongoing. The sunless had a wall rise under itself, and it was running on top of the walls toward one of the channeling Templars. "Only 5 seconds left, keep casting, ignore him." The sunless reached the Templar, and since the skeleton was not moving, a wall rose under its feet. Another wall and floor combo sent it flying out of the arena. "2 down." "No, you're done, holy smite!" Sofia shouted as a violent vortex of mana gathered above the arena. The vortex unleashed a torrential wave of sticky mana, charged with a curse of instant death. Everel saw that and quickly changed her tune. "Retreat." A wall propped up under the sunless architect, and before the magic could reach it, it expelled itself out of the arena like it had thrown out the 2 Templars. As soon as the sunless was out of the arena, it froze and was caught in a bright red light like the expelled Templars. A system notification appeared while the Templars stood unharmed under the death magic. Dungeon Master Everel has no fighter left in the arena. Duelists Sofia and Bookie win the first round. Please retrieve your fighters. Let's go. As I thought, the effects of the blessing persist even with the restrictions. Not surprising when it even persisted into the first trial's fake world. The wave of instant death mana was contained within the boundaries of the arena and soon stopped. Sofia and Everel both threw their orbs to retrieve the summons. Everly's giant sunless effigy flinched as if it had received a hit. With the sound of a clock ticking, its health counter ticked down. 9/10. Everel caught her orb back. "Well played, I did not expect such a strong spell to come out of these weaklings. It was well fought." "You don't get it, Sofia." Everel said back, "You're supposed to taunt your opponent. It's half the fun. You had it earlier." Really? Yet. Come on. Now draw your cards." According to the orbs they had used, Everel proceeded to draw 5 cards while Sofia drew 3. Null card, better luck next time. Oceanic Arena, turns the arena into a watery battlefield until another arena card is used. Showdown, fighters can no longer exit the arena this round. None of my skills. And an empty card. I see the point of drawing more than 3 cards. Oceanic Arena is fine. I think I can use it to get rid of the walls the sunless left everywhere, that's a good draw. Showdown can be pretty powerful. It's good to learn this card exists before it gets used against me. On her side, Everel discarded 2 cards to follow the rules. Both of them having drawn their cards, a message appeared, telling them they have 30 seconds to choose their next fighter. How do I best make use of these? I can throw Perith out right now and have an almost guaranteed win with the showdown, but I have to keep in mind Everel also has 3 cards. And if I get a guaranteed win with Perith now, she will know I no longer have him and can freely use her own orb 1 summon for a free win next round without even needing to use a card. Having trouble choosing already? Everel snarked, her next orb already in hand. Sofia completely ignored her as she focused on her possibilities. I should play around the Oceanic Arena instead. And the blank card is not totally useless, Everel knows the cards so even a blank card will restrict her actions as she wonders what I'm holding back. Alright, I know what to bring out. Orb 5, 5 card draws, 1000 mana capacity. I'm ready for round 2. Prepare to lose another health point. That's the spirit. Sofia grabbed her 5th orb, and the countdown showed up again. Throw. There were 2 flashes of light in the arena, and the orbs flew back from where they came. On Sofia's side, 20 small floating destroyer skulls appeared in the corridors of the maze of walls the sunless architect had left behind. Parts of Sofia's testing with the orbs included trying to fit the skull choir inside. It worked, and it even froze the skull's mana upkeep. Since each skull cost 50 mana per second to maintain, the 1000 mana orb could hold 20 of them. Relatively speaking, Sofia's 1000 mana summon was stronger than her 250001, but there was nothing in the rules preventing that. On Everly's side, what came out of the orb was a very big sunless blob with no visible white eye anywhere. In terms of volume, it was several times the size of the regular sunless amalgams. Orb power 3 to 50,000 mana, leave 299 sunless primordial sludge. That's a lot of skull, let me join the fun. As soon as the restrictions were lifted and the fight started, the sludge exploded into a rain of black balls. Hundreds of sunless drones rose from the splatters. Holy! Attack, fast! As always with the drones, they weren't so scary. The skulls for the choir could destroy them in one hit. But the arena was wide, and the walls made it hard for the skulls to navigate. At this rate we'll have to fight tens of amalgams. Sofia picked the arena card and raised it, infusing it with mana as per the instructions she got in a tiny system window when she first drew the cards. I play the Oceanic Arena card. Movement in the arena instantly stopped. Once again the fighters were all prevented from moving or doing anything, and the arena started to change. The walls broke, the floor sunk, leaving the fighters suspended in the air, and tons of water started filling the hole. Not bad, to think you'd get rid of my walls so easily. I have to thank you for designing this card. Are there many arena cards like this one? There are a decent few. Wait until you see the fun ones. They kept talking as the arena slowly filled up with water. Interesting. What are you going to do now? There's nothing left to stop the skulls from destroying all the drones before they can fuse. You think this is all my precious sludge can do? Wait and see. The hole where the square arena used to be was completely filled up, and to Sofia's surprise, it did not stop. Contained by the magical boundaries of the square arena, the water kept rising in the air. It's not going to stop. The water goes as high as it's deep. The Oceanic Arena is a perfect cube of water. It stops at the arena's upper boundary. Good thing skeletons don't need to breathe, but I hope the cards aren't all that slow to take effect. This is one of the slowest ones. I think you can guess why. I thought the fight would continue during the change, though, Sofia confessed. And have the round be over before the arena transition ends? We can't have that. The faster arena transitions do happen live, but not this one, Everel explained just as the water stopped rising and the fighters were freed. Immediately, the skulls flew through the water. The sunless drones were nowhere nearly as mobile in water compared to their speed on the ground, and they were defenseless against the destroyer skulls. Seeing things were not going in her favor, Everel also played a card. I cast Showdown. This is now a fight to the death. A depiction and description of the card appeared before Sofia's eyes, but she already knew what the card did. What? While she's losing. Not good. Either the sludge has another ability or she's going to play another card. But I can't do anything, the skulls need to keep preventing the drones from fusing, I can't play around her cards no matter what I can imagine them to be. Everel picked another card from her hand and raised it high. I cast Black Hole targeting all sunless drones. The card appeared before Sofia, it depicted a flat black circle. Black Hole forcefully attracts all entities of a chosen type toward the center of the arena, the effect lasts for 5 seconds. Oh, shit! How many drones are there left? 70? A black ball appeared in the middle of the underwater arena. How do I save this? This round is going to be tough.